Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Carrie Oderman with UATV. The social media activity of both political parties as well as ordinary users largely define the results of the snap parliamentary election in Ukraine. Some tendencies do correlate with the results. So, what's the role of social networks in Ukraine and the parliamentary vote there? To discuss this, we welcome to our studio today Maxim Panchenko from Ukraine World. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Your organization analyzed different segments of social media use in Ukraine. Let's start with what you analyzed.
Yes, well, in fact, this was the second part of our research, because we already had one research previously when we analyzed how the electoral campaign went and how it was perceived by social media, like specifically VK, Facebook and Instagram.
Now, some of our international viewers might not be familiar with VK.
Yeah, VK is the Russian social network of Kontakte, which is currently blocked in Ukraine and has been so since, if I'm not mistaken, 2017. But there are different, like VPN services that allow us to connect to the social media, and not to say that this stays the most famous, the most popular social media in the occupied territories of Donbass.
Okay.
Yes, so we actually analyzed how social media both reacted to developments around the electoral campaign and elections as such, as well as how they shaped it, because many political forces led by Mr. Zelinsky and the servant of the people, they started this tendency, how they acted on social media, how they tried to deliver their messages through social media. So that was the scope of our research.
Oftentimes, the use of social media is looked at from the 2006 election in the United States, when Barack Obama really engaged in social media. Are there parallels that you can speak of? And was President Zelinsky in the advantage because of his experience as a TV personality and working in media?
Well, Mr. Zelinsky is definitely a neophyte in this sense in Ukraine, because he started this tendency during the presidential campaign, and he used it to his best benefit, because he won largely due to his media presence and on social media too. And this is the trick he repeated with his party during the parliamentary snap elections. And first of all, he acted as a proxy for his own party, largely so on the social media too. And he used all the techniques he had during the presidential campaign, like different memes and different, there were no intermediaries, no media, like conventional media between him and the constituency. Other parties tried to follow this pattern during parliamentary elections more than they had during the presidential elections, but Zelinsky still was the first, and he benefited from it, to a bigger extent than others had.
Okay, so the first and maybe the best at it, is it because the social media political marketing branch isn't as developed in Ukraine as it maybe will be in the next election, in your opinion?
I think so, but I think the main reason is not because social media have developed as such in Ukraine lately, because they have been around for some time already, but because Zelinsky and the servant of the people did something nobody had previously resorted to. And I think that's the secret of his success. Let's
talk a little bit about money. Social media is known because it's in political campaigns because it's so inexpensive. Did this also help Zelinsky's campaign?
I think so, but I don't think he bets on the cheapness in the first place. Of course, I think this favors his strategy, but not in the first place. And I think the primary benefit for him is that he can directly contact with the audience. And in fact, he does use many of the proxies of himself. I mean, like, he tries to engage the audience not only directly to him, but also through the products of his studio, the Kvartal 95 studio, and through the pages of his actors, through the pages of his products, like different, like even TV series. I mean, like on the pages of those series, there is like covered, campaigning. So
now, as someone that's analyzed this, I'd like to know, what was the most outstanding social media post from Zelinsky's campaign?
Well, it's not that there has been some, any single one, but it can be said that he certainly betted on saying that I'm new, that I will change the system, and he also used the slogans from his presidential campaign, so that's how he was a proxy for his party, and, all the similar stuff. Like that.
I asked that because I know you've been looking at quite a bit of social media posts.
Yes.
You actually summarized 10 points as part of your analyzation. Yes. Could you tell us about them?
Yes, and it is very handy to compare them to how the things had previously been during our previous reporting period. So, as opposed to the previous reporting period, there has been no such standoff between Poroshenko and Zelinsky, because there had been rivalry between them two. Now it's gone, and it can be said that attention to these two candidates dispersed quite evenly between all the parties, it is best visible through Facebook, because Facebook, the algorithm of this social network, allows creation of so-called echo chambers, which essentially allows people that sympathize with different political parties come together in their different groups, and that's why it is best visible on Facebook. However, the tendency that has kept around is that every social network is kind of a different story, because, like I have told you about Facebook, and as compared to that, VK is a very different pair of shoes. It is anti-Ukrainian in its every aspect. It is not so much a rivalry between parties, not even remotely. It is rather that pro-Russian forces are trying to say bad things about any political forces in Ukraine, even including the forces that are perceived in Ukraine as pro-Russian. So that's very interesting. And when it comes to Instagram, as in the previous reporting period, Zelensky continues to dominate Instagram, but the share of his presence there has shrunk from 82 to 60%. And there have also been some other changes too. For instance, Host, that had failed previously to make an impact on Instagram, has almost tripled its presence on Instagram. It went from 5% to 13%. As opposed to that, European Solidarity, led by former President Poroshenko, lost its presence on Instagram because it went from 17% to only 8.5%, which leads to a conclusion that there has been a major reshuffle on this specific social network during this snap election.
Now, echo chambers, only listening to people that share the same opinion as yourself, it can be dangerous. Was there any evidence that there was outside influence in the social media posting on Facebook or VK?
Well, I think that it can be said about VK because it is a Russian social media, and also because many of the posts come from the occupied territories. So it's not just a social media as such; it is also a battlefield in this sense of the information warfare on the part of Russia. However, algorithms of Facebook and Instagram are much harder to trick, which is why it is more of a fair playing field. That's why results that we saw there, both on Instagram and on Facebook, were much more trustable.
How polite are Ukrainians that disagree with each other on social media? Is there any way to gauge that?
Well, again, every social network is a different story, because on Instagram there is not so many space to do that. It's just only about pictures, about memes, and that's it. So there was not really that kind of rhetoric. Facebook witnessed a much more heated debate. That's true. Also because the attention, as I said, was very dispersed between different political forces. However, the leader of this, of the level of emotions, was of course VK, because the Prussian forces, they did not only say bad things about Ukrainian political forces, but they evidently also worked to that end. Evidently, Russia tried to instigate hatred, tried to instigate rhetoric and narratives on VK like Ukraine is a failed state, and they even used a phrase, Ukraine is a country 404. It has non-existent country, which is why they tried their best to to say that not only bad things about political forces, specific political forces, but also about Ukraine as a country.
What can the government, not politicians, but the government and policymakers do with the information from your research to make the social media landscape safer for voters?
Well, I think they can, first of all, they can learn from it because, and more specifically from Zelinsky and the servant of the people, because like it or not, they used the social media to their advantage, to the best of it, which is why our research can show the strategies, how they can use these strategies, how they can use social media to influence the minds of the constituency, and how they can do it cheaper, as you said, how they can do it having a direct contact with the Ukrainians, and so on and so forth. So that's the main thing they can learn.
And probably the last question is, if there's not an interface between a politician and the potential voters, is there more room to make mistakes without a campaign manager, with someone being able to post things instantly? Were there any major faux pas that took place in this election cycle?
Well, nobody said they did not have any campaign manager just because they went online. I mean, even though they used the new technology, the new for Ukrainian realities, not so new for the world, they still had their strategy very coordinated and very agreed between themselves. So this is a very thought-out strategy they resorted to, and as we can see from the results of Zelinsky and his party, they have really managed to do everything right, or more right than anybody else in this campaign.
Well, so it's a new trend for Ukraine, but some of the old tendency with campaign managers and thinking things out was still there.
Yes, that would be fair to say.
Thank you very much for visiting us today.
Thank you for having me.
That was Maxim Panchenko, Ukraine World Analyst. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.